And President Trump pointing out that the operation began in 2014 before he declared his candidacy.
Finally, now we know, after all these allegations for a year, that there was no collusion between this president and Russia. Now we can move on.
The FBI under pressure after a stunning admission. The agency confirming that it failed to follow up on a tip about the accused Florida school shooter Nicholas Cruz.
The president tweeted, just like they don't want to solve the DACA problem, why didn't the Democrats pass gun control legislation when they had the president, the House, and the Senate?
When President Trump meets with our nation's governors in just a few short weeks, he will make the safety of our nation's schools our top administration priority.
But to the inside, it's Elliott Sadler. A photo finish. Tyler Reddick's going to edge him out. And Tyler Reddick at the line pulls it off. Woohoo!
Good morning, me and my gang. What a gang we got here. Rachel.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Todd.
Great to be here.
We brought in the heavy hitters, Todd.
Yeah, the heavy hitters today, you know.
It was
Something
a
like that.
snowstorm yesterday in New York, so I decided to dress in orange, kind of a Miami color, remind us that spring still is going to come.
Along those lines, I mean, this week, we're getting like 70s here in the New York metro area. 70s in February.
I had hope. You know, yesterday here in New York, it started with beautiful snowflakes late in the afternoon.
Right.
I went and worked out, came out, and you know what? It was just slush. It was terrible. I'm ready for spring.
I'm
Bring
proud
it
of you
on.
for working out, though. That's good.
Yeah,
You're
I didn't-
traveling.
I
have a
didn't
hard
work
time
that
doing
hard.
that.
I ate in my hotel room and then went to sleep.
Me too.
Well, listen, good morning. Pour yourself a cup of coffee. Stay in bed. But we have two stories that we've got to tell you about. They're developments. They're the stories we told you about yesterday. And that is, of course, the terrible shooting in Parkland, Florida, as well as the indictments of the Russians. Let's start first. The president down in Florida, very busy on Twitter, as he often is. Very busy weighing in on the FBI. First, we want to start with this tweet. President Trump tweeting, very sad that the FBI missed all of the many signals sent out by the Florida school shooter. This is not acceptable. They are spending too much time trying to prove Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. There's no collusion. Get back to the basics and make us all proud. There, President Trump certainly acknowledging that the FBI is really an agency in crisis at this point.
Well, and I think what President Trump does is what he always does, which is he channels what we are all thinking, doesn't care about the politics. I mean, a different president might have tried to couch that and protect the FBI from any criticism, especially at this moment in time and where they're already getting a lot of criticism from other issues related to Russia and et cetera. The president right now saying, listen, get back to basics. This is what the American people want you to do. Stop, your leadership is politicized. Get back to the basics. Make us proud. I love this tweet.
So do I. And so much of the reason why I think the president won the presidency is because he keeps it simple.
That's right.
Americans, we get so complicated. The reason he won, he spoke to the American people and he got a simple message across. Here, the FBI's job is to protect the homeland from bad people at its core. That's what it is. President Trump is not flying a plane into a building. President Trump isn't shooting up a school himself. So let's forget all the Russia stuff. The FBI's goal is to keep Americans safe. That's what they need to do, and that's why he speaks to the American people.
And people's hearts are breaking. I mean, they just think you just lost a child in a shooting, and then this is like insult to injury to find out that there was a very credible tip from somebody who knew him, and it wasn't followed up on, and had that happen. And by the way, the FBI isn't the only one who missed the boat here. There were lots of other, more than 20 calls to that home. There were lots of signs missed. But boy, that tip call really has frustrated people.
To put in some context, this tweet that we've just shown, the president isn't necessarily saying that these two are connected. What's happening, and Todd, you've reported on these text messages from FBI agents, but he's certainly pointing out in the larger picture that the FBI has all sorts of problems, and it certainly isn't good at a time when the FBI should be doing its most basic job
100%.
to protect us.
Leadership matters, and when your leadership is at the top, politicized, and you have your lead investigators, texting their lovers about how to, get an insurance plan to disrupt President Trump's election, you got to go, what's the FBI doing? Let's get back to the basics. That's what the American people are saying in their kitchens, in their diners, at their work. That's what they're saying, and I love that he just really channels that.
I love sports analogies, okay? The reason the Patriots, New England Patriots, have been so successful, they have a motto: everybody do your job, okay? The FBI, do your job. And those 50,000 text messages sent between Page and Strzok, that's not doing your job.
Well, and, let's also talk about in that tweet, the president weighing in on the indictments. 13 Russians and a troll farm in St. Petersburg indicted for trying to throw our elections into total disarray and chaos. And I want to get to what the president tweeted. But first, the Democrats are really overplaying their hand. Here is New York's Congressman Jerry Nadler appearing on another show, making a comparison. Hold on to your cup of coffee. Here is what Nadler had to say yesterday.
This is a very serious attack against the United States by a hostile foreign power, an attack against our election process, our entire governing process. We know that the attack is continuing. The president and the Republicans in the House, for that matter, refuse to do anything about protecting us from an attack. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor and didn't react. That's the equivalent.
When Deputy AG Rosenstein came out, and the first thing, the most important thing he said is, one, no collusion. And by the way, this did not affect the outcome of the election. What you're seeing here from Jerry Nadler is spin. This is the Democrat spin on this. And this is how they want to pivot away from the two most important conclusions of the indictment. I will say this. It is important. And by the way, in this interview, if you watch the whole thing, Chris Hayes, who's the progressive poster boy, even he pushed back and said, really?
Pearl Harbor?
Well,
wait a minute. That's a little much.
He was shocked. But I will say it's important to hear who is saying this, Jerry Nadler, because Jerry Nadler, if the Democrats take the House, will become the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And I think he's signaling, look, I'm going to start hearings for impeachment on Trump.
That Americans should be outraged at that comparison by Jerry Nadler, because thousands of people died in Pearl Harbor. This is an indictment that the Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, said, look, no American wittingly participated in Russia's attempt to throw our political system into chaos, to sow discord was the actual language. It is unrelated, and they should be very mad.
I was going to say, the first day of law school in criminal law, you learn knowingly is a crucial element. It's called the mens rea part of a crime. You literally can't commit a crime, or at least most crimes, without the knowing part. Rosenstein, who, say what you will about him, he's elevated himself to this position in the DOJ. He's not a bad attorney.
I hope that
he said not knowingly.
I hope that we could put up at some point some of the crazy ads. They're so stupid that the Russians concocted. But really interestingly, Facebook, the vice president of ads, has said, listen, based on the type of ads that have put up, and more importantly, when they were put up, he doesn't think that the Russians were trying to affect the outcome of the election. Let's look at the tweet.
Okay, so just so you see what you're seeing up here, now the president was pointing to these tweets, and this is what Rob Goldman, the head of ads for Facebook, says. The majority of the Russian ad spend happened after the election. We shared that fact, but very few outlets have covered it because it doesn't align with the main media narrative of Trump and the election. Very telling, he continues, most of the coverage of Russian meddling involves their attempt to affect the outcome of the 2016 U.S. election. I have seen all of the Russian ads, and I can say very definitively that swaying the election was not the main goal. President Trump retweeting these tweets, saying, hard to ignore what Facebook's own ad guy is saying.
Except he's getting attacked viciously, by the way, for saying that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, if most of the ads were after the election, how the heck can you say that it was trying to sway the election?
There is a common theme that we're going to try to communicate over the course of the next 4 hours, and it is the Russians were trying to attack democracy. That needs to be your number one takeaway today. Not that he was trying, the Russians were trying to put Trump in the White House. It is clear that they were trying to attack democracy. And folks, they still are. And that's what the president is trying to point out. Yet the mainstream media continues to attack him and attack the process. Right. This is an attack on democracy that we need to be vigilant against. The president realizes that. I don't understand why the mainstream media doesn't.
And we should apologize if we've sought your morning off with that Nadler sound, but email us at friends@foxnews.com and let us know what you make of it.
All right, turning now to your headlines. We begin with a Fox News alert. 66 people are dead after an Iranian commercial plane crashed into a mountain overnight. Aseman Airlines making the announcement just a short time ago. Flight 3704 was on its way to Yasuj from Tehran. Bad weather was reported in the area. And more breaking news. A case like this is made for the death penalty. That bold statement coming from the prosecutor in charge of trying the confessed teen killer who gunned down 17 people in a Florida high school. A new report now revealing just 17 months ago, a state agency investigated the 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz after he posted videos to Snapchat cutting himself and saying he wanted to buy a gun. Our own Rob Schmidt is live in Parkland, Florida, and he'll give us more details at 6:30. Turning to extreme weather, Mother Nature dumping 7.5 inches of snow in parts of the Northeast. The swift-moving system causing some problems for travelers both by ground and air, with dozens of flights reportedly delayed or canceled this morning. But warmer weather is expected to melt away most of the mess by the end of the weekend.
Yay.
The USA men's hockey coach is not a believer in miracles today. Tony Granato skipping a handshake with Russia's head coach after a 4-0 blowout. He seemed furious that his Russian counterpart left in his best players late in the game. Despite that loss, the U.S. claiming a silver in the men's skiing slopestyle. Nick Gepper coming in clutch during his final run. The United States currently sitting in 5th place in the medal count with 10. Norway leads with 25. And those are your headlines.
Yeah, you don't do that thing where there's 2 minutes left in the game. They're on a power play. Russia puts all its best players, including Ilya Kovalchuk, out on the ice. You don't do that, and especially in the spirit of the Olympic Games. That's a no-no.
Really?
Yeah, you don't do that.
I don't know enough about sports to comment on that.
I'd just say go America. I haven't been watching it at all either, but we got to take the Russians on. I mean, they're not like going on.
All right. Coming up, a campus protest against white nationalists somehow turns into a rally against cops.
Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the off our campus!
That escalated quickly. A student from that college joins us live coming up.
Plus, Democrats seem confident they're going to retake Congress, but not so fast. The brand new poll numbers that may put Dems on the edge. That's next. Welcome back. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats seem confident in their chances to retake Congress in 2018.
I think every poll now is double-digit that people would vote for a Democrat or Republican. Public is, shall we say, inclined to support Democrats.
But not so fast, Nancy. A recent 2018 generic ballot has voters preferring the GOP over Democrats, 39% to 38%. So what does this mean for 2018? Here to break it down is Republican pollster John McLaughlin. John, tell me, the Dems thought they had the advantage, but now this poll changes things.
Well, the president's leadership. What's going on is 40% of Americans think the country's headed in the right direction. Under Obama, we didn't hit that number in the last term. So you have the president's numbers going up, his job approval's in the high 40s. You have the majority of Americans think the economy's going to get better, 56 to 32. That's thanks to President Trump. The bad part that's holding us down is in our latest poll in February, we had on McLaughlinOnline.com, we have the GOP majority's approval rating is only 37%. So it's 58 disapprove. So we've got to get Congress to vote. So what's happening now is the Democrats are being exposed. They complained about the president's State of the Union, which, if you watched it, out of the 46 million people that watched it, 75% approved. But you had Democrats sitting on their hands, couldn't even clapped for policemen, Marines. They basically walked out on the president, and they were exposed. They were exposed in the government shutdown, and now we've got to get Republican leadership in the House and the Senate to make them vote on things like workfare, make them vote even on term limits, make them vote on things that the president's proposing.
So you say that President Trump has really been the factor to change the advantage over to the Republicans. Let me ask you, Mitch McConnell, leader of the Senate, saying that he expects the Republicans to lose seats. The New York Times headline wants you to believe that they could even lose the Senate.
Well, we shouldn't, because I tell you what, and Senator McConnell, when he ran the Senate campaigns, was very good at this, where we gained seats. But I'll tell you what, we only have 8 seats up out of the 34. The Democrats are on the line, and 10 of the Democrats are running in seats in the Senate that Donald Trump carried those states. 4 of those states were carried double digits. So we ought to be able to gain seats like North Dakota, Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia. We're going to put the Democrats, we've got to put them on defense. We've got to go after them, make them vote. Senator McConnell has to make those senators vote on popular issues so the voters can see what their choice is in November. We should not lose seats in the Senate. The House will be tougher to hold, but we should be able to hold the House too.
And John, let's talk very quickly because we're almost out of time, but the independents in the latest poll, 25% leaning GOP, 26 Democrat, 49% undecided.
Right.
What do you make of the independents where they are right now? And is Pelosi a factor that counts against the Democrats in the independent column?
Well, there's 2 things. One is, in the midterms, we get a lower turnout. You only get between 80 and 90 million people come out. The Democrats seem a little more fired up. We have to get the Trump voters. When I was part of the Trump campaign, President Trump brought we got 9 million more voters in 2016 than 2012. He was the reason we brought them out. We have to get the Trump voters back out. The second thing is the independents. We got to turn them around, which is why it's so important that Senator McConnell and Leader Ryan get the Democrats to vote on things that independents agree with us on.
Right, and quickly, John, you were a pollster for President Trump. Where is he?
Where is he?
Where is he on this?
I'm sure he's pushing his agenda on infrastructure. He's pushing his agenda on immigration.
Yeah.
Those are majority popular things. The House and Senate need to vote on.
And those silent Trump voters in 2016, are we going to see them in 2018?
If they get a choice to see that their votes matter to get those things passed, they'll be out.
All right, it's midterm time. Thank you, John. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Griff.
All right, coming up, are you ready for that moment when an attack strikes and your life is threatened? In the wake of the school shooting, a former MMA fighter and Green Beret has a message for America. In a protest against white nationalists on campus somehow turns into a rally against cops. One student from that school is here next.
Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus!
23 minutes after the hour now on your Sunday morning, and some quick headlines. Iraq now revealing what they'll do with 1,500 wives and children of ISIS fighters after the defeat of the terror group. Kids 3 and under will remain with their mothers in detention facilities. Ages 4 to 14 will be in orphanages until they can be given to their home countries. And the U.S. Navy not backing down patrols in the South China Sea regardless of China's newly built islands in the region. Lieutenant Commander Tim Hawkins telling the Associated Press sailors will keep monitoring trade and security, saying international law has allowed them to operate in those strategic waters for the past 70 years.
Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus! Hey cops! Hey fascists! Get the f*** up off our campus!
So why did they turn so quickly on those people there? Leslie King is a correspondent for campusreform.org and student at the University of Tennessee. What happened that really devolved into chaos quickly?
Well, hi there. Thank you so much for having me. And basically, let me start out by saying I do not agree with what this organization stands for. I do not agree with what Matthew Heimbach had to say. But I will say that our chancellor at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Chancellor Davenport, did an excellent job. She understood that this group did have a right to speak on a public university. However, she took the measures necessary to bring in law enforcement officers to protect students as well as everyone on campus.
So, Lexi, let me back up just 1 second so our viewers understand. This guy, Heimbach, very associated with the alt-right. He's been sympathetic to the views of Adolf Hitler, and this group that was protesting obviously does not want that on their campus. But what isn't clear is while the group was chanting, and I watched all the video against, in the early part of the evening, against Nazis and fascists, it eventually turned into just a rally against cops who played no part in the story except for the fact that they're there to protect the group's First Amendment rights.
Yes. So over at Campus Reform, at Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, we have to deal with these cases a lot. We have to deal with left-leaning students who don't understand why cops are on campus. Cops are on campus to protect students because, unfortunately, we use phrases like white supremacy and neo-Nazi to describe people like this presidency who aren't white supremacists and who aren't Nazis. So students, the phrase is being watered down. So whenever an actual white supremacist or a Nazi comes on campus, we have to have law enforcement officers to protect students because they don't even know what a white supremacist is.
It's such an excellent point, Lexi, that we're throwing that word white supremacist around, and you know, it is getting diluted, and a lot of these kids don't know what that means. Now, what was the breakdown on the campus? I mean, we saw those protesters, were they, and that were saying those terrible things about our cops who are there to protect us. What are they? Were they a small minority, or were there other campus students there that were supporting the police officers while they were there protecting them?
Well, what you tend to see in a lot of media, what you tend to see on social media, on other news organizations, are the students who are trying to protest this organization and who are trying to protest these cops now. So on campus, these are the stories that you're going to hear about mostly. You're going to hear about the students who talk about how these police officers were walking around their campus in riot gear and were preventing students who wanted to protest from stepping off the sidewalk. But what they don't understand is that law enforcement is doing that for their protection. Yeah. And there are students who are upset that this organization was escorted into the building. But in reality, that's for student protection. Students are the top priority at that university. And yes, this group is important because they are citizens and law enforcement is there to protect them as well. But students are getting upset that they had police officers on their campus in riot gear. But in reality, they needed that to protect everyone involved.
Great point.
So the stories that we're going to see are the officers and how the officers are protecting the Nazis on campus.
Talk about undermining your message. Lexi, thank you so much. That was amazing insight this morning. And have a great day.
Thanks, Lexi.
Thank you so much.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking out about recusing himself from the DOJ Russia probe. Does he think he should have? That's coming up.
Plus, a Florida teacher posts about gun violence is going viral after the school shooting. Her message that every parent should hear. Coming up.
Fox News alert right now. A case like this is made for the death penalty. That bold statement coming from the prosecutor trying the teen who killed 17 people in a Florida high school.
And now a new bombshell report reveals the state knew about the shooter's desire to buy a gun in two years ago.
Rob Schmidt is live in Parkland with the developing new details. Rob, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, guys, good morning. And a better look at this disturbed young man this morning, and yet another missed warning sign in this case. And there have been quite a few at this point. In 2016, Nicholas Cruz posted a video on Snapchat that showed him cutting himself. And it also stated that he wanted to buy a gun at that point. It was a Snapchat video that disturbed a lot of people, and it got reported. The Department of Children and Families actually investigated that video. They found out that Cruz was actually receiving outpatient care from a mental hospital here in Broward County, and that hospital had deemed him stable enough at that time 2 years ago to not be an inpatient, to not be hospitalized there at that mental hospital. So we have that. Also, a local newspaper interviewed the family that took in this young man back in November after his mother died. The couple and their son took in Nicholas Cruz. They said that it was very clear he is depressed about his mother's the death of his mother. He was very lonely. He wanted a girlfriend, and he had this arsenal of weapons when he moved into that home. But this was a gun-owning family themselves. They made him get a case and lock them up, and the father in the family thought he had the only key, and as it turns out, he did not. They still say they have no clue why this young man did what he did. Now, looking forward to the trial now and how this is all going to be handled by the state and by prosecutors. The prosecutor has hinted at the death penalty, saying, quote, this certainly is the type of case that the death penalty was designed for. This was a highly calculated and premeditated murder of 17 people and the attempted murder of everyone in that school. Our office will announce our formal position at the appropriate time. Now, Cruz has said he would plead guilty if the death penalty is off the table. So we'll see how that turns out. Coming up here in about an hour or so, we're going to have a look at how some of these kids, some great kids here at this school, are trying to get back to life, and they did so yesterday on the football field. They lost their assistant coach, who died a hero this week. We're going to talk to them and show you that story. It's something nice to see, a bit uplifting after such a terrible week. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Rob. I look forward to that. And boy, that community is going to have a tough time getting back.
Right. Absolutely. Rob, thanks. All right. There is a Facebook post from a Florida Teacher of the Year that is going viral. Oh, totally going viral. I'm going to read it to you right now. This is Kelly Guthrie Raley, and she writes, until we as a country are willing to get serious and talk about mental health issues, lack of available care for the mental health issues, lack of discipline in the home, horrendous lack of parental support when the schools are trying to control horrible behavior at school, in parentheses, oh no, not my kid, what did you do to cause my kid to react that way, in parentheses, lack of moral values, and yes, I'll say it, violent video games that take away all sensitivity to any compassion for others' lives, as well as reality TV that makes it commonplace for people to constantly scream up in each other's faces and not value any other person but themselves. We will have a gun problem in school. Our kids don't understand the permanency of death anymore. Parents, it's time to step up. Be the parent that actually gives a crap. Be the annoying mom that pries and knows what your kid is doing. Stop being their friend.
Wow. And no wonder this has gone viral. I think she's taken, you know, what so many parents are, and so many teachers see every day. I hear that all the time from teachers that, you know, they're doing the parenting at the school. She also talks about, you know, that your bedroom is not your bedroom when you're a teenager. Right. It belongs to your parents. And so many of these cases we've heard of, you know, starting with the first one in Columbine, that these kids were, you know, creating these bombs and keeping these weapons in their room. And I always wondered, how do they do that? I go into my kids' room all the time to make sure they did their bed or that their closet's not a mess. How do you keep weapons? There's a lack of parenting going on. Of course, in this case, this kid was an orphan. He was sending signs, in my opinion. He was screaming for help at all these different cases.
Absolutely. And, you know, as a parent and a reporter, I don't shield my children from the news. And, you know, what she's getting at is the desensitization of violence, not just death and murder, but just the general acceptance that our culture has taken on in terms of violence. And, you know, when I do these terrible stories, I talk with my children. And I've actually gone to my daughter's school a couple of times and talked about the current events and talked about the importance of recognizing that this is not okay.
I like that she brought up video games.
I agree.
I think there is a desensitization there. We're not talking about that. We're going straight to guns. We're not talking about all the parents, by the way. In the case of Adam Lanza in Newtown, that mom tried to have her kid committed, and there were no facilities available for her to do that. There are lots of different things we're missing. Right. Anyway.
On the video game front, bring in a ball or a book every now and again and get away from the video games. That's my thought.
Right.
Please send us your emails, friends@foxnews.com. Obviously, this is a talker. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely. Now we got to get to some headlines. Thousands of people grieving a slain Chicago police commander, a community paying its final respects, recalling stories of selflessness for a Commander Paul Bauer, who was gunned down while on duty. He leaves behind a wife and their 13-year-old daughter. Meanwhile, in Georgia, police cars lining the streets for miles, honoring fallen Locust Grove officer Chase Maddox. He was shot and killed while backing up deputies serving a warrant. 4 days after Maddox was killed, his wife delivered the couple's second son. Makes you really think about that, the campus report we just did with them calling police officers fascist, horrible. Attorney General Jeff Sessions standing by his decision to recuse himself from the federal investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election.
I believe I did the right thing, the only thing I could do. I participated in this campaign, and as such, under explicit regulations of the Department of Justice, no one can participate in the investigation of a campaign in which they were an active participant.
Sessions' comments coming in an interview with Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo, who joins us later this morning to talk about that conversation, which airs today on Sunday Morning Futures. An undefeated transgender wrestler said, oh, I'd be mad about that. Packed theater in Atlanta, losing it during the 10 minutes of 50 Shades Freed. The correct movie eventually played to everyone's delight. It's not clear how that mistake happened. Black Panther is smashing box office records, expecting to eclipse $190 million this weekend. I actually want to go see that one. I don't like the 50 Shades movie.
But that's amazing.
Yeah. I'd be mad.
That's hysterical.
You know, I met Chadwick Boseman. He was in D.C. to do the James Brown movie. Yeah. What a superstar, really nice guy. I can't wait to see this movie. And I just want to say one quick thing, and that is that your news read started with those officers. 10 officers now. We're just in February. 10 officers have been killed in gunfire. And this is a culture any cop will tell you is troubling as we start 2018.
Absolutely.
All right. Top Democrat Adam Schiff says the Obama administration shares some of the blame for Russia's meddling in the 2016 election.
Some of the responsibility is also attributed to the Obama administration for not establishing a more forceful deterrent.
Is he right? We'll ask Democratic candidate for Ohio Governor Dennis Kucinich next.
Plus, Corey Lewandowski, Charles Payne, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and Texas Congressman John Ratcliffe, all here live. Coming up, do not go anywhere. Fox and Friends continues.
A real bad boy.
44 minutes after the hour now, and some quick headlines. Philadelphia's district attorney is dropping 51 drug charges while decriminalizing marijuana possession. Larry Krasner says it will free up resources for more serious crimes, but will still prosecute drug dealers. He just recently filed a lawsuit against opioid manufacturers while the city considers adding a safe injection site for drug users. And some Kentucky lawmakers are hoping to weed out people who don't work. They're proposing a new bill that would cut a person's unemployment benefits according to the state's unemployment rate. Kentucky became the first state last month to add a work requirement for collecting Medicaid benefits. Griff and Rachel, down to you.
All right, thanks, Todd. One top Democrat is partially blaming the Obama administration for Russian meddling in the 2016 election.
I do think, though, that in fairness, some of the responsibility is also attributed to the Obama administration for not establishing a more forceful deterrent. I think it goes back to the Korean hack of Sony, in which there was a minimal response. I think that others around the world watched that and determined that cyber is a cost-free intervention.
Is this true or just another excuse as to why Democrats lost the election? Former Democrat Ohio Congressman and current candidate for Ohio Governor Dennis Kucinich joins us now. Welcome, Congressman.
Good morning.
Good morning. So a lot of people, and I know you're a Democrat, but a lot of Republicans look at this and they say, hey, look, the Democrats, under Obama didn't really seem to care about the Russians until Hillary lost. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's wrong to blame President Obama. He fully supported Hillary Clinton. And let's face it, his legacy is at risk with President Trump. But you have to remember, it was 11 days before the election when the FBI Director Comey made an announcement that seemed to implicate Hillary Clinton in some activity that could be defined as criminal. That changed the outcome. That's why Hillary Clinton lost. The administration was monitoring Russian activity, but you can't blame President Obama. This is all about Comey. If you take Comey out of the equation, Hillary Clinton wins the election.
Hold on one second, though. Let me just jump in here and push back on that, because the allegations say that it did not affect the outcome of the election, but yet it started in 2014, Congressman. So, you know, when we hear the headlines all day long today that President Trump isn't doing enough with sanctions on Russia, with leading on efforts to block what happened with Facebook and elsewhere, doesn't it go back to President Obama not taking a tough enough stance?
Well, again, you're talking about the outcome of an election here. And there were polls that were taken that measurably changed after FBI Director Comey had his announcement in which he seemed to finger Hillary Clinton, and it brought everything back up again about the emails. That changed the outcome.
Congressman, we're not talking about the outcome. We're talking about what the president is pointing to in tweets today, which is the ad guy for Facebook saying that this is about causing chaos in our political system, Democrats, Republicans, otherwise, not the outcome. And so the proposition that Obama couldn't have done more with his not only FBI, but CIA, DNI, and elsewhere, didn't do enough, didn't start that tough enough stand on Russia when he was trying to do the reset.
Well, I think that you have to realize that the Obama administration was monitoring it. And now with the Mueller indictments that have come up recently, they're fingering Russian involvement, at least Russian nationals, and we'll see how the trial goes. But the whole thing about blaming President Obama is filtering into a narrative that somehow he didn't do enough to support Hillary Clinton. And the fact of the matter is he put it all on the line for her.
Well, I'm not hearing that the problem is that he didn't support Hillary Clinton. I think you just pointed out that he was monitoring the problem. I think what Americans are asking is if Russia was such a big problem in this election, and we know that it happened in 2014 under President Obama, why didn't he actually do something about it versus just monitoring it?
Well, again, let's sort this out. President Trump had nothing to do with this outcome. This was about Comey, and President Obama was on top of it, and that he didn't say anything. I think that, you know, he's going to have to account for that. But the fact of the matter is, in the end, the election was decided on the basis of what Comey did, not on anything else.
Let's take a look at what Jerry Nadler, Democrat from New York, said just yesterday on MSNBC.
This is a very serious attack against the United States by a hostile foreign power, an attack against our election process, our entire governing process. We know that the attack is continuing. The president and the Republicans in the House, for that matter, refuse to do anything about protecting us from an attack. Imagine if FDR had denied that the Japanese attacked us at Pearl Harbor and didn't react. That's the equivalent.
Congressman, more than 2,000 people died in Pearl Harbor, Americans, that is. What do you make of your former colleague's comments?
I respect Jerry Nadler. I reject his analogy. I want to say it was about Comey. The outcome of the election was tilted by FBI Director Comey. That's why Hillary Clinton lost.
All right, Congressman, and good luck in that race for governor out there. We look forward to following it and hearing more from you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. All right, President's Day is tomorrow, but according to MSNBC's Joy Reid, it'll be a day without a real president. The new comments sparking outrage. That's coming up.
A President's Day without a real president. Monday is President's Day, and it will be the second consecutive such holiday without an American president. By the way, this is according to Joy Reid.
This isn't
yeah,
right.
This isn't me saying this.
This is Joy Reid. Right.
Sure, Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office when he's not golfing. He lives in the White House, at least in theory, with his family, but he is not the president of the United States. Trump is a hollow vessel, as there has ever been in the White House. His rule lacks even a shred of moral authority. Wow, happy President's Day.
Yeah, the mainstream media really needs to stop this, because what do we start the show with? How Russia is attacking the democratic ideals of our country? Right. This is playing right into the Russian hands. It's exactly what they want.
Couldn't agree more. And by the way, the president isn't saying that there is no Russian involvement. He's just saying, I didn't collude with them.
Well, and, you know, it's in the larger context of things, we have as the president's pointing out, the FBI struggling to get back on track with many problems. That is undeniable. And so comments like these, with due respect to Ms. Reid and offering her opinion, it doesn't help what is a very pressing problem in America. And, you know, if you have a problem with President Trump's immigration plan, with his tax reform, with something like that, then attack the policy. But just an ad hominem attack against the guy, and that's basically...
But this is their strategy. From the very beginning, the resistance said, we're not going to normalize him. We're not going to accept this presidency. That's why they've ran with this whole Russia ridiculous storyline for over a year. Joy may not think he's the president, but go ask people in middle America who are doing a lot better economically than they ever did under the Obama administration, whether they like this president. And we just did that story you did earlier was so good on explaining how the numbers have bumped up when the Republicans deliver on policies.
Right.
The American people respond, and that was led by President Donald Trump.
We got a big show coming up next 3 hours. Vice President Mike Pence coming under fire for his faith, and he's just the latest victim of being